Great. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, Ari and I were just having an exchange of much needed validation, at least much needed on my part,
It
from
was a
with one
hype
another.
fest for sure.
It was a hype fest. We need those from time to time. Um, I hope that all of you have had a wonderful week this week. Welcome back to Restitching the Tapestry. We are on episode 28. And woo, 28, getting closer to 30. But we are getting closer to we're getting closer to episode 30, which we're going to be having a lot of fun with. Granted, we have fun every night, but we really wanted to allocate an episode to talking about climate change, which is the topic for this evening's show. Both Ari and I are very passionate about climate change. I mean, hell, I wrote an entire manuscript of poetry about it, so like that should say a lot. And I like our goal is to just kind of create an awareness. We're not scientists, mind you. We are not people who we can read the statistics, we can look at the different issues, but our capability of interpreting them is definitely based on our background. So there will be certain points during this episode where we may say like, hey, check out the source for further details, so on and so forth. Okay. So first and foremost, before we get to reading the thing, why am I not thinking right now? The mission statement. I am failing tonight. Before we get to reading the mission statement, Ari, how are you?
I'm fine. I feel pretty good. It's snowing here though. I'm on the lake shore, so we got about good 6 inches today because of the polar vortex. How are you, Donny?
I am doing well. We've been getting a little bit of snow here too. I live more so on the interior part of Michigan than Ari does. But I've been kind of craving snow because this winter we've just, at least in my area, we've barely gotten any snow. And I want snow. But I'm sure come the end of this month I will be like, springtime, please get here like now. Um one of my funny thing, like today I went to the store and the roads were really bad this morning, and it never ceases to amaze me how poorly Michigan drivers drive when you would think that living in the state they would be accustomed to driving in winter conditions. But it's like once summer and spring hit and then it gets to like fall and winter, people are like, wait, what, this white stuff, what is this? I have no idea. It's really funny.
It is.
So anyway, so we have Arby here, we have Leo here, David is here, Shayna is here as well. It's good to see all of you. Thank you for joining us tonight. If you were enjoying beverages, please share what beverages you were enjoying in the comments below. I am having a cup of Lady Grey tea. Ari, what are you enjoying this evening?
I'm having some Cote de Rosé, which is my $18 a bottle
Oh,
wine.
and I would have wine, but I drink my bottle of pineapple wine that I got from Aldi for $3.99 earlier in the day. Leo loves your hair, Ari.
Oh, thank you. I dyed it yesterday.
Lemon iced tea and mango juice. That's what David and Shayna are drinking. That sounds good. Okay, so let's get going with the mission statement first and foremost. So, many witness different atrocities, large or small, that fray the social fabric around us, and much of the time, many may feel powerless and know not how to address such things. Over time, this fray has gotten worse with the rise of social media because people are able to share collectively in trauma as it goes viral. And basically, we're able to make this connection with one another as, this collective grief unfolds in real time. So that begs the question of what can we do to mend the communities that have been seeing considerable tragedy, most of which privileged groups have caused, and many who won't admit their personal involvement. So, our goal with this show is to restitch the tapestry together through conversation, creativity, and action, and ultimately, education. Yeah. So obviously tonight our episode is about climate change, and obviously climate change affects all of us. So I really feel like it definitely warrants some conversation. Zachary Mario 133 is here. Welcome. So Ari, I do want to start with a bit of a discussion question first. And this is like spontaneous discussion question. When did you first start showing interest in climate change slash start showing concern for it?
Um, the first time I really thought about climate change, was the first time I really thought about climate change was the Al Gore documentary. Remember the Al Gore
I do
documentary?
remember that. Yeah.
And it was like the first time I really thought about it. And
When
it's
did
just
that
like
come out?
it was the mid 2000s, like 2006 or
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I
Like
remember I was about to enter college when it came out.
it
Hmm.
was the mid 2000s. It was just after it was like just a few years after he lost the election, and he was looking for something to do, and he was just talking about climate change, and he was on a tour, and people really made fun of him for talking about climate change, and how it was just like, you know, like that he was making this overblown deal about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I remember there was a South Park episode about it, making fun of him, and, I just remember thinking, like, that it wasn't I remember thinking, like, "Is this pressing right now? Are we like, is this really pressing right now? Like, is climate change, like is this" like, it didn't feel like it was something to panic about yet.
Right.
And so a few
Um,
years passed, so then a few years passed, and then Greta Thunberg came, and then it felt like it was more of a panic situation.
right. Well, and of course, like we've seen a lot more signs of climate change in recent years, especially. Whereas back around in 2006, where, by the way, thank you, David, for putting in the title of of that movie. It's The Inconvenient Truth, and it did come out in 2006. So, like, I really think that the early to mid 2000s were a very unique time here in the United States in the sense that like collectively our country experienced a very horrible trauma when 9/11 happened, and after that our priority and our dialogue and discourse seemed to really focus on the war in the Middle East and our own recovery, our own security, safety, anything that talked about other things like the climate just seemed very peripheral and like because I remember thinking the same thing back then. I was just like, is this fear mongering or is it legitimately something that should be something we should be concerned about? And to answer the question that I posed as well, I first started becoming interested in climate change. I think it was around year 2000 actually when Gore was running against Bush, right? Because that was part of the platform that he ran on. He was very passionate about the environment. And I remember news stations doing like I remember they did this report on El Nino, that ocean warming phenomenon that causes like weather shifts. And in this news report, like the segment, they were talking about how like humans are destroying the planet, and they like had like this very elaborate like time lapse thing that was simulating the end of the world. And I remember when I was what in like sixth grade when I saw this, I freaked out.
Yeah.
Like it scared me
Mhm.
to the extent where I didn't even want to think about it. I was just like, this is too much. I can't think about it. I would have nightmares about it. But as I grew older, And I did watch The Inconvenient Truth at some point. As I grew older, I started thinking, this is something that's pretty significant, especially after Hurricane Katrina, for example. I think that was 2004, 2005. Like, that was a very significant, again, traumatic event for a large portion of our country that started developing more conversation about climate change, or at least opening people up to the thought of it, you know? I just went on a tangent. I apologize.
No, it's a good tangent. I like it.
Sometimes they can be good, I suppose.
It was definitely worth hearing.
Oh, thank you. David mentions it's sad because the issue has been regularly undermined by corporations and those politicians who didn't think it was important, or those who say the apocalypse will happen anyway, right?
Hmm.
There are people who do seem to romanticize the thought of the end of the world.
Yeah,
Um, and we could do an entire episode on that subject in and of itself,
it's true.
um, but a lot of people just, they're already like, well, the world's going to come to an end with some sort of like catastrophe, so why bother worrying about it?
People
um
getting excited about like the possibility of a zombie apocalypse or some horrible like disease-ridden end or something.
yeah, grotesque thing, yeah, like, oh, I just
But
think that, oh, go
they just
ahead.
don't even think about the reality of like what the end of the world would look like. And it basically would look like climate change destroying the world. And it's not a fun end.
No. And I think the reason why so many people like either glorify it or romanticize it, it's because a lot of us fear it, but we try to keep that fear like subconscious. And that's why we kind of create like these stories and like these fantastical imaginations about like what would happen, like, is it the Yellowstone super volcano, is it a great tsunami that'll wipe out something, like, so on and so forth. There is like an entire market for that type of like entertainment, especially if we look at movies and um so on and so forth. Like, my favorite franchise, Godzilla, is largely based on mankind interfering and playing God with the environment slash like a whole variety of different things. So, um, let's see. I'm reading the other comments here. So, Southern California weather has been odd to say the least. A few weeks ago, it snowed in Malibu, and that never happens. Wow. Interesting. Conservatives, Leo says conservatives don't want to accept climate change because they want more land for agriculture or industrial businesses. And toward the latter quarter of this episode, we're going to talk about a few false narratives that have been created about climate change. So let's move forward, Ari. So how how did the narrative, okay, so like, when did this begin? Like, how did this happen?
Um, well, it happened. Let me get to my notes.
Because I think like a good a starting point for us is to begin with um like what some people's thoughts have been about climate change, when that narrative started really
Yeah,
happening,
there
because it's
was an
pretty recent.
intergovernmental panel on climate change, and basically, uh, they decided that climate change was because of global atmospheric concentrations of dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. They increased markedly as a result of human activities since 1750, so it goes back all the way to 1750, and it's now far exceeded pre-industrial values determined from ice cores spanning thousands of years. So uh, it's basically melting our ice caps. Global increases in carbon dioxide concentrations are due primarily to fossil fuel and land use change, while those methane and nitrogen oxides are primarily due to agriculture. the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, is basically like very confident that this is the conclusion about this. Like 9 out of 10 chance of being correct that this is the conclusion that they reached. But there is a
That's
chance
really,
that might not be right, but they're like fairly sure that that's what's causing climate change.
well, like the interest, like, because I know like there are an alarming number of people who deny climate change still. And the truth is, climate change, I mean, it's relatively a recent thing that's being discussed if we look at the grand scheme of sciences, but it's something that's been peer reviewed and discussed in multiple different disciplines. Scientists like that excerpt mentioned have taken ice core samples, which you can examine like the history of the atmosphere through ice core samples because ice stores like air, and additionally, like I know that a variety of other scientists can examine like atmospheric conditions and planetary conditions through like the assessment of tree rings,
Well,
the
this
assess
isn't just one scientist saying this. This isn't just like a group of scientists saying this.
yeah.
This is a group of like international scientists through several countries studying this over a period of like several decades, tracking the changes of ice cores of from the Antarctic and the Arctic, watching them slowly diminish and watching the weather patterns change, watching, I mean, like this is not just a little change. This is like vast
Mhm.
changes happening very quickly over the past decade to 2 decades, very quickly, because of human intervention and from
Right.
what they've decided.
And the fact that it's so many people, like that's a large swath of people. If it that means that all of those people are peer reviewing the research, which lends more credibility to it in of itself. Now, I know like right now we are living in a very unique time where a lot of people just simply do not trust experts at all. They don't want to believe experts. I could go on a whole tangent about how I think that that's an extension of how education in our country is very much undervalued. But I really think that if people do trust any professional judgment, that being able to see that this is a peer-reviewed subject and that multiple scientists from multiple countries are coming to this consensus, then it like there should be some credence for believing that it is in fact true and significant.
Yeah, and it's just I can't stress this enough. It's not just one scientist saying this. It's not just a group of scientists, like a small group of scientists saying this. It's like a vast number of scientists saying this over several, like a couple decades of research and study over multi-study search, um, of ice cores and meteorology. I can't say it. I
That
can't say
word
it.
gets me meteorological. Is that what
Meteorology,
meteor
meteorological
me,
survey. I'm going to
that
say
got us
it.
that got us both. I love
Yeah.
it. Wow.
I said words. See, this is why I'm not a scientist, but I do believe in scientists and what they say, and what they say is
Well,
true.
yeah, we trust their judgment because these individuals are passionate about these fields. They dedicate years and years of their life pursuing an education, developing field experience. Like, if a person's going to spend this much time doing something, why would we not believe believe their expertise, Interesting. David mentions you can also see that in agriculture as CO2 goes up. They have noticed that average sugar content of fruit and vegetables have increased because of the increased CO2 content of the atmosphere. That is interesting.
Hmm.
And he adds which reduces the nutritional content.
Is that why we have more obese people?
That would be something interesting to look into for sure. So, um, I know like we've had conversation about both Al Gore and Greta Thunberg already, and I guess my big question, Ari, is how has the because like they've both Al Gore and Greta Thunberg have a completely different tone when they talk about climate change. Like if you look at 2006 and like the early 2000s with Al Gore, he was very forthright about it, but he was also unbelievably focused and poised on politics. So he wanted to soften the rhetoric so it appealed to other people. How would you say that the rhetoric has changed now that Greta Thunberg is?
Greta Thunberg is like a force. She's like will not be reckoned with. She's like, this is my future. She's like, we don't have time. She's like, one of her speeches, she was quoted, remember, it was a very famous speech that she gave at the WHO. She said, I don't want you to be hopeful. I want you to panic. I want you to feel the fear I feel every day. I want you to act. I want you to act as if you would in a crisis. I want you to act as if the house was on fire because it is. Um,
Oh my God,
and
yes.
so, and it's like the house is on fire. Do something. And she
It's
said that
very
several times.
I remember watching numerous speeches that she's done, and I think a lot of people underestimate her because she's a how old is she? I'm trying to remember how old she is.
She's only like 15, 16.
Yeah, and when she first started, drawing world attention, she was like, I mean, she was an early teenager, and I think a lot of people they were just like, "Oh, look at a cute little teenager talking about the environment." But she's been very upfront about not pandering to those people who talk down to her like that. She's been very determined to really stand up for herself and stand up for the cause. And I think that's extremely powerful. Clearly, I think the reason why she is so vocal too is she realizes that the climate, it's largely a generational thing as well. And I hate saying that, but um, baby boomers, so on and so forth. Like there are many who do care about the environment, but they grew up in a time where talking about the environment really wasn't the number one thing on a lot of people's lists, right? And unfortunately, that conditioning is still there,
Hmm.
for a lot of people. So I know that Greta Thunberg very much focuses on younger audiences, Gen Xers, millennials, and especially um, Gen Zers in order to kind of create some solidarity about the subject, for sure.
She was definitely something that caused a lot of conservative outrage. Uh, I feel like uh, she because she's so outspoken. A lot of conservatives saw her as being kind of uh, they made fun of her. Uh, the fact that she's autistic, we made fun of that a lot. They made fun of the fact that she is a young woman. They made fun of just how her appearance. They made fun of her intelligence. They made fun of her, a lot of things. And it was just like, did they not understand, like, who she was and what she was saying? And like, they didn't, like, they just were making fun of these, like, very shallow, very, like, things that didn't mean anything. Like, they just wanted to, like, grasp at straws, and so because they were so, they didn't want to believe in the climate change, and so that they were just sort of, um, politicized by the words that she was saying, so they were just gonna make fun of her. It was like
Yeah,
a straw man argument.
yeah, and like I remember seeing some of those people making comments like that, and it was some of them were disgusting and very unsettling. Like I saw people like going as far as like exoticizing her and
Fetishizing her for sure.
fetishizing her, and people were making fun of like her parents and the other people who were quote unquote influencing her, like she was being used as some sort of weapon of the liberal machine, something to that effect. And it's all distraction tactics, like that's what it comes down to. And I think over the past 4 years we've seen that when people are uncomfortable about something, their primary way to get around it is not simply to argue facts but to deflect or distract, which is why
They,
they
like,
focus in
latched
on.
into the fact that she was also vegan, and, like, that became a huge thing, that she was also, like, vegan, and it's like, if she can be vegan, like
Like veganism was being imposed on her by her family. Like I remember seeing being like, well, this is just her parents being bad parents. And I'm just like, enough. Like the ice caps are melting. There are more important things to worry about than
than what
somebody
she
being
puts in her
vegan.
mouth.
Exactly. Um, let me catch up on the comments really quickly. Shayna says the worst what like a lot of people are suggesting that it's God's will that that's what climate change is, and Shayna's like this pisses me off because hearing people say that is something so dismissive. It is dismissive because it uses that as kind of like a convenient justification that allows people to just dance around the topic. And honestly, I mean, it's not good, but it's a solid example of a false narrative that is perpetuated about climate change and the justification of climate change. And I'm going to be talking about a few more of those later on in this episode too. But um, so let's talk a little bit about do we have like a lot of people are always commenting like that climate change is too big, that how are we going to tackle climate change? Ari, do you think that we are ready to tackle climate change? Do you think we have the capability?
Yes, we have the tech necessary right now to combat climate change, so we don't need the science. And scientists have said that we don't need anything extra to combat it. We have everything we need. We just need to take action now, and we need our leaders to take action. And as far as targeting on the climate, the biggest problems of climate change, and as far as implementation of the technology. So,
Right,
what we would need to do is we would need to target the biggest emitters of pollution of CO2, such as China, the US, India, and Indonesia. And they would need to target uh, important areas such as building codes, agriculture, and cars. Um, and they would need to make smart policy changes, such as making polluters pay for polluting. That would make it so that paying would be more detrimental than actually changing to uh, be more beneficial, like changing to a system that was more sustainable or more green energy efficient.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It like truthfully at the end of the day, it's just going to require life alterations. I don't think they're going to be difficult or extravagant life alterations. I mean, like Shayna says down at like in the comments, recycle, recycle, recycle. That's one simple way of starting, you know? Um, and I know that's something that I've been trying to prioritize a little bit more over the past year and a half, like being more conscious of recycling and the sustainability surrounding that. Um, we're going to talk a little bit more about sustainability here in a little bit too, because that's another false narrative that's perpetuated. It's not sustainable. There's no way we can do it, you know? So I guess like if
But
we
getting
look,
buildings up to code is like, it's so easy. Just like getting it, it's like the easiest thing that we could do is just like turning buildings, getting buildings into a sense of retaining heat in the winter time and making them more energy efficient for the, it's like a matter of like replacing windows and making green gardens on the roofs and just changing the heating system. It's just it's like a matter of just like changing the way the buildings function, and sometimes it's just a matter of like the way the windows work.
right? Or
So
the specific type of material that's used, or the specific type of agriculture, architectural like strategy that's used, you know?
but it requires that the building owners pay money to do it. And sometimes landowners or building owners don't want to pay the money to update their building code uh, to do that because it's more cost effective for them to keep a building the way it is or the way it has been for the past 50 years and be an old outdated building that's not up to code or up to an old
Rickety,
code.
mold ridden. Do you remember that building in college that like had mold in its basement?
Yes.
I like every time we mention that, I always think about that. Like that building, like what effort would it have taken to fix that in a timely fashion, right? It's at the end of the day, it's always about money.
And they built all these new buildings, and then there was just like the buildings that just like were falling apart. And like I lived
New,
in like one of the oldest buildings too. I lived in Walt, and it was just like such a nasty old building too.
hmm yeah, and it's just like um, all these the new buildings were like energy efficient. They were like top notch, very state of the art. Like I can't imagine that it would have been any more expensive to fix older buildings, you know?
To retrofit, yeah.
Yeah. Shayna says, reduce car use if possible, take public transportation, a bike, carpool. Leo mentions, obviously not now, probably would be a good idea considering COVID. That's a good point too. Um, Interesting. David mentions it's a security issue. Climate change will lead to water wars, and there are too many flashpoints. It literally makes the world less safe, much less the ecological impact.
What's a security issue?
Um, I'm going back to read. Oh, like I think people are making it a security issue because David earlier mentions that people love to claim that China will not change, and that's kind of used as like a justification for why we shouldn't do anything about climate change.
Oh yeah, so
And David suggesting that climate change itself is a security issue and could potentially lead to further security issues too.
it's just we're having a standoff because one country's not going to do it, so nobody should do it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great reasoning.
It's like I keep thinking about like how many like ecological disasters, for example, need to happen before further action is taken. Like, I mean, if we think about the BP oil spill, like that, when did that happen? Was that in like 2006 also? BP oil spill.
My sister got money from the BP oil spill.
She did. Oh, it was in 2010. Wow, I was off. She got money from the BP oil spill.
Yeah, she was working in Florida at a shrimp restaurant, and she lost wages due to the BP oil spill because she was a waitress. Like she lost noticeable wages. She got $20,000 or so from the BP
Oh,
oil spill.
wow. Yeah, because I remember it really affecting business in the Gulf states significantly. Let's see. David says, sorry, internal dialogue. That's totally okay. We're always about internal dialogue. But like looking at this, I mean, looking back at the oil spill, like it literally happened from April 2010 through September 2010. So several months. There were 2,500 to 68,000 square miles affected. Like it cost $61.6 billion. That's that's terrifying. And I know like here in Michigan there's been a lot of debate and controversy around an oil pipeline that's under the Straits of Mackinac, which is the body of water that connects Lake Michigan and Lake Huron between Michigan's two peninsulas. There's literally an oil pipeline running underneath the Great Lakes up there. Can you like I can only fathom like how horrible it would be if some sort of accident on that level happened in the Great Lakes.
Well, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when
Yeah,
that's
it is a
happening.
matter of when. Yeah. Like, and it's really unsettling because the Great Lakes is one of the United States' most significant natural resources, um, for a whole variety of different reasons. And if that gets damaged, what does that do to all of these other areas? You know? And in my mind, like, why should that not take priority? Like, that should be at the forefront of everyone's minds, in my opinion. But who am I?
We're just average citizens. We don't have any say.
Uh, we're not salty, we swear.
We'll just say told you so when it happens, I guess.
Right.
Here. Just
I'll write another
cry.
collection of another collection of sad poems about it, being like, "Damn it, why didn't more happen?" Oh my goodness. So, I guess like if we fast forward to now, because we've been talking a little bit about things happening over the past 20 years, if we look at the current administration, how how are they going to how are they poised to make the environment a priority?
So, they did a few things. First of all, they released some information about uh, how the ice caps are melting. They showed a picture of how bad the climate is just changing. They also rejoined the Paris Climate Accord at the beginning of their administration, something the Trump administration had left. And because Trump was a denier, which, I mean, that was kind of on his uh, main topic, is just being a denier.
Yeah.
Um, but they have some serious goals. I don't know how, if it'll be soon enough, but from their website, they have ambitious goals to meet the urgent demands of the climate crisis, empower workers to lead clean energy revolution, and achieve a carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035, and put the United States on a irreversible path to net zero economy by 2050. um, they want to advance these goals to ensure that we are tapping talent, grit, and the innovation of the American worker, and revitalize the energy sector, conserving our natural resources and leveraging them to drive our nation towards a clean energy future, create well-paying jobs, and the opportunity to join a union, delivering justice for communities who have been subjected to environmental harm, according to their website. So,
Hmm.
so they want. I don't know if that's soon enough. Honestly, 2035. It seems ambitious, but 2035 is quite a ways away. That's 15 years. I mean, that's like we're
Yeah, a lot can happen
we're
in
sitting
15
here in
years.
2001 going. I mean, is that soon enough?
See, what makes me sad about projections like that is that, I mean, if we look at how much things have changed in the past 10 years, all it takes is a shift in administration to change all of that, to withdraw from things, to shift priorities away from the environment again, you know? So really is 2035, is it sensible considering the variables that could take place between now and then? The
Because it's like,
restructuring.
it's nice to say 2035, but like, okay, so then the next administration comes in and goes, boop,
Mhm.
no thanks.
Well, and the like, I know that the climate accords, like, that's significant, but the fact that people can simply withdraw from it if they don't like it or they don't like what's being said or that it's stepping on their toes or making things inconvenient, that to me is unsettling, you know? Like, I really think that there needs to be a more concrete agreement between, and not just an agreement, but a consistency in
Yeah.
implementing action. Arpy says, I loved your recent Godzilla video. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any chance to do a Godzilla video, I try to take it. uh,
I didn't see your most recent one. What was it about?
oh, I think Arpy was referring to the one about the anti-hero,
Oh, okay.
the anti-hero one. I would really love, like, speaking of the topic that we're talking about, I would love to do maybe we could make this one of our episodes. I don't know. An episode talking about like environmental narratives across Godzilla films.
Mm.
Because, like, I mean, art and film and so on and so forth can be used as commentary. So I think that would be really cool. But I am hella getting off topic, sort of. so, so right now, I mean, at least I think we're getting back on the path. We are at least in a situation where we're poised to make more progress than we've made over the past 4 years, at least. So that's, I mean, that's welcome, I would say. Um, whether or not it's successful, whether or not we're able to accomplish those goals in the next, what, 10 to 15 years, like that has yet to be seen, right? So let's talk a little, like, now I'm sure a lot of us are thinking about what we can do to
Oh, the vegan teacher.
I saw that.
They do associate us with the vegan teacher, and I hate the vegan teacher. Oh my god.
Yeah. Unfortunately, like a lot of people again
Think that that's who we are, and
they
that's not
create
who we
false
are.
yeah, they create false narratives that go to the extreme by focusing on extreme individuals, which is really annoying. I'm just gonna say. I apologize. My nose just suddenly decided to run ridiculously. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do individually to reduce our carbon footprint.
I in fact, going vegetarian or vegan. Meat or dairy is responsible for 14.5% of man-made global greenhouse gas emissions, mainly from feed production or processing of methane, 25 times more potent than CO2 at trapping heat in the atmosphere over 100 years that beef and sheep belch out. So going vegetarian or vegan, at least even one day a week, uh, will help the environment.
Exactly. Because when you think about it, like the meat and dairy industry, I mean, is essentially a constant assembly line of um, production. It requires industry to produce the meat and the dairy. It requires space and land for these animals who are continually being bred for this. Like they need space to thrive, you know? So it's just this constant cycle, right? And the more it's used, the more production is required, and that produces more of those greenhouse gases.
I mean, dairy farmers will try to say that it's pretty innocuous, but they've had an effect on the environment.
Right. I mean, like, and if the effect wasn't cumulative, it would be a different story, I think. But like in a way it is cumulative. I mean, I know that I don't have the specific statistics right now, but I know as horrible as the pandemic has been, there have been studies released that have made comments about like air quality improving a bit. So like despite some cumulative aspect of environmental damage and climate change, it can be gradually reversed to in time, you know. It
Mm,
just requires, consistency.
yeah.
What else can we do?
Choose local or organic products. Transporting
I
products.
love that word.
Transporting products uses trucks and fossil fuels, which is bad for the environment.
Yep. Reduce food waste by planning meals ahead of time. That's one that I know that I can improve on a little bit. Um,
Oh, right.
and it's one that we don't really, I think a lot of people don't think about a lot. Um, but I know that like there are instances where I do waste a lot of food sometimes. But
You don't
like,
even think about it too. Like it's just like, oh, this is bad, Chuck. And like,
mhm,
and then you have to like go buy more, and then it's just a cycle.
that cycle of consumption, yeah. Um, and it's like aptly next on our list we have composting if possible. That's one thing that I would love to get into. Taylor is not on tonight, I don't think, but I know Taylor composts, and Taylor's composting area is like so cool. Like I like composting goals.
David, I believe totally in voting. Yes, voting is a good.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes. Voting, reaching out, I think is essential. Like it's very important to vote for people who do value these issues, people who are willing to take some sort of action. And again, I like if we put an extension on that, educating. That is so important. Educating people that climate change is in fact a thing, educating people to value the assessments that professionals make, and teaching people to develop the skills to better themselves when it comes to the environment and conservation. What else?
Oh, reusing old clothes and cleaning rags. Shayna, that's a good one too.
Oh, yes, good. Mm-hmm.
We're actually getting into clothes, I think. Buying fast fashion. Don't buy fast fashion. It goes out of style fast and gets thrown into a landfill.
Yep.
Like, if you can, go to a consignment shop or go to like a Goodwill or a thrift shop and buy your clothes that way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But
Let
don't buy fast fashion.
Washing your clothes in cold water. That's an interesting one too. Because
I never.
obviously,
Oh, go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead.
You go ahead.
I was gonna say, obviously, it takes energy in order to heat water, gas energy largely in a lot of areas. So that produces exhaust.
Mhm. Yeah, I never knew that it was like energy efficient to wash your clothes in cold water. I've always just washed my clothes in cold water. Ever since I was a kid, so I just never knew that it was like better too.
Same here. Honestly, I always washed clothes in cold water because I was afraid of colors bleeding together in warm water or shrinking or anything like that. Like,
Right.
I guess there's a third advantage to it, like not damaging the environment further. So, let's see. Buy buy less stuff. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Material accumulation is a huge problem that I think a lot of people don't acknowledge enough.
Yeah, like we're not asking that you be like a minimalist, but just like buy less stuff. Like Amazon is a beast. Just buy less stuff.
Yep. Like I know like I've been trying like I think it's Western culture largely that causes this, but it's very much a classist thing too. Like this need for material wealth to have ownership over material wealth. And a lot of people will just buy things for the sake of having them, which isn't always a bad thing, but like I really think that there needs to be some questions asked. Like, am I going to use this? Is this going to always be of value to me? You know, if it's something that's going to be very fleeting, kind of like if we think back on that fashion one that we just mentioned, like if it's going to be fleeting, then what is the significance of having it? I'm
I
sure
say
people
this.
could.
I say this after I bought like 5 books yesterday.
But see, at least you could reread the books, though. I know, same here. But the thing is, like, if I ever, because I rarely ever do like book purges, like, I typically will donate them. Like, I'll
Okay.
donate them to libraries, blah, 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 thrift shops. I'm like very inarticulate today, forgive me.
Yeah, I'll donate my books when I'm done with them. That's usually what I do. Is I donate them to Goodwill.
Yeah. Let's see. Bring your reusable bag when shopping. Oh my God. That, like, Aldi is one of my favorite places to shop because of that. Um, Aldi is very environmentally conscious and they they do sell bags, but you can like bring them back into the store. You don't have to discard them. Whereas there are other stores that won't let you bring in bags unless you're performing a return.
Mhm.
So, like, that's why I value stores like Aldi because they do make a conscious effort in like having organic foods and caring about the environment, caring about waste and cost.
Yeah, I was thinking about starting at shopping at Aldi again because, first of all, their prices are just bottom basement, just cheap. and two, they're just so good at like giving you the giving you the best deal, and just they're so good for the environment, and they're good at being local.
Yeah. Leo says Aldi is good, but the problem is that they are stressful on their employees. I've heard that before, actually, too. I think it's because they really rely on minimal staffing. Um, every Aldi that I've ever gone to, and like the speed in which they pride themselves, like you just mentioned, that pressure is very stressful. So there are pros and cons for sure.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. Well, I mean, I've had people kind of mention it to me, but let's see. Try to avoid items with a lot of packaging. If you're in the market for a new computer, opt instead for a laptop since they require less charge. Like a lot of these ones focus on electricity. Change to LED bulbs. That's what I've been trying to change to recently. In fact, my desk lamp is an LED desk lamp, and I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I have an incandescent bulb. I just noticed. I'm I've scored all the bad points. And actually, I go to the grocery store. Ever since the pandemic hit, it was really hard for me to use my reusable bags because they weren't accepting them for the longest time. Like they were like
Yeah.
physically like, we will not accept reusable bags. Like you cannot bring your reusable bag into the store. And I was
I-
like, ah.
Yeah, I've been into stores like that too, which is frustrating. Turn off lights when you leave and unplug appliances. That's something that I kind of obsessively do. Much to the irritation of people around me because I'm always like, did you unplug this? Did you turn off that? Did you blah, blah, blah? I don't know if it's because I'm paranoid, but it's also like environmental related things. Leo asks, aren't fluorescent bulbs good too? Um, I think it depends on the variety of fluorescent bulb because I know some fluorescent bulbs, like if you dispose of them, they like if they are busted open, they like produce like chemicals or release chemicals. Like I think mercury is one of them. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember reading about it. Let's see, drive less. If you drive, avoid unnecessary braking and acceleration because that produces more exhaust. Avoid flying, but if you fly, go nonstop as it takes less fuel. And go economy. That's some of our list.
Yes, because economy takes up to 3 times less fuel than going business class or first class, because of the space it takes up.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I can never emphasize this one enough. Plant your gardens, plant your trees. Because, like, if you can produce food for yourself and that reduces the amount of shopping and the amount of costs, that affects a whole bunch of different variables when it comes to the environment. Were there any other ones that you could think of, or was that our list? That was a pretty comprehensive list.
That was a pretty good list.
So now that we are down to the last couple of minutes here, we're probably going to go over a little bit, of course, but we're going to talk about a few false narratives that a lot of climate change deniers perpetuate. The first one is climate change is natural. Obviously, there is some semblance of shifts in environment and in climate over the years, like ice ages, so on and so forth. Like that could be influenced by natural disasters. But if we look at the past 50 years and see how quickly certain things have shifted in the climate that have not been drastically affected by natural disasters, what is the only remaining variable?
I mean, like, when I was a kid, we didn't have, like, 70-degree days in, like, February when I was a
Oh
kid.
yeah.
It
Oh
was,
yeah.
like, till I got in my 20s, we started having, like, those, like, days in the middle of February or March where it'd be, like, all of a sudden 70 degrees, and it'd be, like, sunny, and then it'd
We
be, like and then go like down to like 20 the next day.
I will never forget when we were both at CMU during our undergrad. Remember, I don't know if you remember 2008 in January, there was a tornado that one year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was 2008. It literally blizzarded. I don't know even know if that's a word. We had a blizzard like in early January, and then a few days later, we had like a hot day and it was like 75, 80 degrees, and we had a tornado that night in January. That
Yeah.
is way not normal. That is so not normal. There was a flood on campus. I remember I tripped in a roadway during a flood. It was a fun experience.
Yeah, I wasn't there for that. I was in Ann Arbor.
You probably remember that whole debacle though, because I
Because
know
the
it
power
like there.
because the power was out all over campus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in Ann Arbor.
Oh yeah, you were gone over the weekend, I think, right?
Meeting my boyfriend.
I forgot he lived in Ann Arbor.
Yeah.
What's another one? Climate change is a device used by the left to control business and industry. That's a pretty significant false narrative that's being woven, considering uh, climate effective technology and industry often creates jobs and benefits industry. It can be used in a lot of instances as innovative, um, like innovation. So we can't regulate other countries, only ourselves. So what's the point? That
Oh, oh yeah. But that's what the
well,
Paris Climate Accord is for, is that we get other countries to work with us so that we can work together towards doing it all at once.
that other country won't do it, so why should we? Tommy won't give up his toy, so why should we give up our toy? Like really? Oh my god, that angers me. It's so childish.
It's so childish.
Or it's too expensive. There are certain aspects that are too expensive, but when you look at, I mean, obviously a lot of this technology is new. It does require cost in order to create it. That should be
That
expected.
life-saving surgery is going to be too expensive. Why should I get that life-saving surgery?
That is the perfect analogy. Yes. Oh, let's see. It costs jobs. Actually, it produces jobs in the areas that require the construction, maintenance, and monitoring of such, you know, innovative technologies and implementations.
But
And of course,
it changes the face of the industry, and that scares people.
yeah,
It
like,
changes the way that we do things, and that scares people because it's not the way that it's always been done, and that scares people. Change scares people.
oh yeah, for sure. And then I mean, that transitions into people arguing that it's not sustainable. It is sustainable if you mobilize correctly and have people supporting it. Anything can be sustainable as so long as it has support, so long as it has people investing in it. So
Maybe we can get the Redditor Wall Streeters to support it.
that was amazing. Yeah. If only maybe we can get the TikTok K-pop legions to do something about it.
You know, actually, I am fully supporting this. You know, we laugh about it and we joke about it, but actually, they are a force to be reckoned with.
A phenomenal force. Like, that's what mobilization can look like in an online environment during a pandemic. It's very impressive. So, Well, my friends, we are at the end of our journey this evening. Thank you for listening to us talk about climate change. Shameless self plugs for both Ari and I. Buy my book, Carbon Footprint, ironically. Buy Ari's book, Full of Now. Okay. Thank you for supporting small authors and small publications. We really, really appreciate it. Subscribe to our channels. If you've not subscribed to mine yet, you're here. Voila. Subscribe to Ari's channel, Strange Nothings. Click like on our video. And if you're watching this later, feel free to leave a comment and we will follow up with you. As always, thank you for joining us. And you have a wonderful night. Bye.